Welcome to the Stumbling Spirit, contemplations on the path of resilience. Whether you realize it or not, you are resilient. It's your birthright. As you take in your next breath, know this truth. It's not only about your capacity to overcome difficult situations, but it's about your courage to do the necessary work to heal, learn, grow, and move forward. What you gain is invaluable wisdom. And it's through these hard stumbles in life that we often discover a new purpose that aligns with our spirit. My name is Fabio da Silva Fernandez, Reiki Master, Mindfulness Coach, and Mystical Explorer. Join me weekly as the Stumbling Spirit podcast highlights the lives of extraordinary people like you, sharing transformative stories and beneficial practices of resilience to guide you on your wellness journey. Have you ever thought of starting a new hobby? 10 years ago, Noel Scully did just that and developed a passion for hiking mountains such as Mont Blanc, Everest, and Kilimanjaro. Noel's mountain climbing adventures have taken him to 15 countries across 4 continents. Based in Dublin, Ireland, this teacher of 34 years scales rugged summits and reaches breathtaking views several times a year. Putting it another way, Noel has done about 100 climbs. Here to talk about his regular jaunts to new heights is hiker, educator, and friend, Noel Scully. Hi, Noel. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Fabio. Lovely to be on your show, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk with you.
I've seen quite a few of your photos of your treks online, and they're really stunning. They're beautiful. I found my hands sweating just researching the heights of some of the summits that you've climbed. I have a silly question for you. Are you afraid of heights?
No, but I think you're very generous when you say I've climbed Everest. I've partially climbed Everest to base camp. So I'll just have to acknowledge that one, that I actually haven't summited Mount Everest, but have been to base camp and around it. No, not necessarily afraid of heights at all. Perhaps more afraid of ledges when you're on a ledge, sometimes on a mountain. It doesn't have to be necessarily that high, but when there's quite a steep drop, just to the right or left of you, that can be just a little bit disconcerting at times. But it just calls for solid feet and just to focus, just to look ahead and just keep moving.
What inspired you to hike?
Well, I've always loved outdoors. Since as a child, I've always loved outdoors. My father would have always brought me outdoors when we were young, would have brought us out to the country a lot, either cycling or out walking. It was a very much an integral part of all of the family. I'm from a family of 9 and I'm the youngest. So it would have been a very much an integral part of family life to be outdoors as much as possible. We lived in a very, very small town in rural Ireland, but most of our cousins lived in the countryside. So in order to visit our cousins or our uncles and aunts, there was no public transport at that stage and we didn't have a car. So it involved either walking out to them or cycling out to them along the canal in Tullamore. And I always loved it. I've always loved that connection with nature, with water, with hills, with trees, with grass, with fields. And I suppose that when I came back to Ireland in 2013, I just hadn't seen as much of Ireland as I would like to have had and explored it, particularly the mountain areas. So in that respect, I thought I'm going to join a hiking group. I'd like to challenge myself a little bit more, maybe to go up more, go higher, increase the altitude, but also just to get to see parts of Ireland you don't normally see when you're kind of on a flat plain. When you're on mountains, you see different perspective on things. It's like kind of being part of a drone. You're brought up and then suddenly you just have this amazing vista and 360 degrees view of a part of your country that you don't get when you're down at sea level.
You mentioned when you returned to Ireland 13 years ago. So I just want to be clear, you're an educator and you taught in Abu Dhabi as well as Brussels. And so that took you away from Ireland for many years, but you returned to Ireland 13 years ago. I get that concept of being connected with nature. Hiking is one thing, and mountain climbing is something else, though. So, what got you into climbing mountains?
I suppose really it was accidental, really, because I joined a hiking group, an excellent hiking group here in Dublin called Out and About Hiking Group. And they are an LGBT plus hiking group. And also, when I looked at their website, I really liked that they organize many trips throughout the year, weekends in Ireland, but weeks abroad as well, particularly in Scotland and many parts of Europe. And what I liked is that, or I saw as the challenge for myself, is that many of these hikes looked quite challenging. And they were over a week. And they were not just a small a hike or a bumble up a mountain peak. They were over several mountain peaks, and they were quite challenging ones. And I knew I was quite fit at the time, but I didn't think that I was at that level of fitness, nor did I have the skill sets to be able to do this hiking or to climb these mountains. I hadn't trained, I hadn't done any orientation courses, I hadn't done any map reading courses. And very fortunately, this group organized these and organized map reading courses. It organized leadership courses. It organized orientation courses. And it also did first aid training with the Dublin and Wicklow Mountain Rescue. So again, these were, I would say, aspirational skill sets that I would have liked to have had. And here they were all in one group that was organizing these and promoting these and upskilling their members in these. So that really, really appealed to me. They hike every week, irrespective of the weather. I think the group is at this stage, I think it must be nearly 30 years, nearly maybe 30, 35 years since it has been set up. And I don't think they've ever missed a Sunday, despite the weather. They will hike in all conditions. They'll just amend the hike accordingly to the conditions of the weather. I think for me, this was a chance to really upskill myself in regards to hiking, inform myself a little bit more into mountaineering, and upskill myself in regards to reading maps, understanding maps, setting out a hike, looking at B plans for a hike in case something was to happen, and just becoming a much more knowledgeable, informed, and more experienced hiker and mountain climber.
The out and about hiking group that you speak of, the LGBTQ plus group that you're a part of, how important is it for you to be a part of your community and do these excursions?
I suppose outside of the work environment, it's quite more relaxed. I think you feel a little bit more at ease with your contemporaries, but I also felt that there was very much a focus on these hikes. Normally on the Sunday when they hike, there are two hikes. There is a moderate hike, and then there was a hike that would be a little bit longer and a little bit more challenging. And even the moderate hike would be quite challenging, so it would. But I suppose from outside of the hiking, separate to the hiking aspect of it, there is a great social bond and a great social connection and a great interpersonal bond and interpersonal connection about what else is happening in the world, particularly in regards to Ireland, both from a social point of view or a cultural point of view, and also maybe from a political point of view, with certain themes and topics that may be pertinent to all of us. And it's quite good to kind of chew the fat on these when you're on a hike and bounce off various people on different opinions about what events are happening in Ireland at the moment, what events are happening in the world, either politically or culturally or socially. I've always found that quite stimulating as well.
That's wonderful. Some people are drawn to water and other people to tropical beaches. What is your connection with mountains? What does it give you?
I suppose, Fabio, what it gives me is, one is it gives me the challenge. And second of all, I find mountains very grounding. And within, say, an hour of where you live and the work environment that you're in and the daily part of life of, you get up, you do your job and you work and Suddenly, then, within an hour of that at a weekend, you're in a completely and utterly different universe completely. And everything else that you do has very little relevance. So it's part, it's absolutely part. And then suddenly you're in a completely different atmosphere, a different kind of strata. And you're in this most magnificent environment. It is incredible. Mountains are incredibly beautiful. They're incredibly strong. But unfortunately, they're also incredibly, at the moment, vulnerable. And we see that in the world at the moment. I mean, I visited many mountains in Europe and also in Kilimanjaro and, also in Everest Base Camp, where you see previous pictures of the glaciers that were there that are no longer there because of various issues like global warming. You're in admiration of the strength and the vastness of these mountains and their power, but also at the same time, what resonates with you also as well is their vulnerability and how over quite a quick amount of time they have changed, and how I think we have a certain part to play in that, or have had a certain part to play in it. And we now definitely have a part to play in protecting them, both mountains and all the rest of nature around us.
Have you done any advocacy around the preservation of these glaciers at all?
None, not as part of a group, beyond my own, well, I'd say conversing with fellow hikers and fellow mountaineers. But in that case, you're kind of preaching to the same people who are on the same hymn sheet as you, because they understand their beauty, they see their beauty, they see their power, they see their magnificence. However, they also see how they're not as sustained or as sustainable as they once were. I mean, I know in the hiking group, I didn't hike this weekend, but they went out this weekend and they do a clear up. Every year they go and they do a clear up of a particular part of the mountain. And they organise that with Mountaineering Ireland. And then they bring it back to a particular area where it is then collected and it is either dumped or recycled as much as can be possibly done. But it's just that is constantly, it would be in the back of my mind all the time, is how beautiful all of this is, but yet how impermanent maybe it has become, or, not as kind of permanent as we always thought it would be. I think that's something we're more aware of, particularly nowadays, really.
And when you say clear up, what you mean is clear up trash and
Trash,
pick it up
yes.
and okay.
Absolutely, yes. And you'd have various bins, and you put it in the correct bins, and you organise that it will be collected then at a different stage. Maybe later on in the week it will be collected. As a hiker, every hiker would be very cognizant of anything they take up to the mountain, they take back down themselves. And then you recycle it at home yourself. Leave no trace. It's a very, very simple motto, but it's one that I think most mountaineers and most hikers will be very, very mindful of, and should be very mindful of. Even to do with skins of bananas or skins of oranges, etc. The temptation is just to leave them on the mountains. No, you bring them back and you recycle them yourself, just to leave no trace of where you have been.
I wouldn't consider myself to be a mountain climber or mountaineer. I am a casual hiker. I usually hike on trails that are fairly flat. I have had the privilege of going to the Wicklow Mountains in Ireland and hiking up some of those, and also hiking the mountains in the West Highlands in Scotland. It's absolutely breathtaking and beautiful. What was the first mountain that you ever climbed?
I suppose the first mountain I would have ever climbed would be a mountain very near from the rural area that I'm from. Tullamore is the town that I'm from. And beside Tullamore, or near enough to Tullamore, there is a small group of mountains called the Slieve Bloom Mountains. Again, they wouldn't be particularly high mountains, but yet, because they're in the centre of Ireland, and the centre of Ireland is like a bowl, you have usually the higher mountains in Ireland are all along coastal. They're all on the north coast, the west coast, the northwest coast, and the southwest coast and east-west coast. So Central Ireland would be very much a bowl then. And yet in the middle of centre of Ireland, you have a few mountain ranges. But it is interesting when you're on those mountain ranges, even though there's not great altitude involved, when you go to the top of them, you get on a clear day, you get a wonderful, wonderful view of Ireland. You can see the Wicklow Mountains maybe in the distance. You might be able to see Meath Hill in the distance or the Hill of Tara in the distance. You might be able to see, the outline of other mountains in the distance. But it's just lovely to get that kind of sense of the beauty of all that is around you, particularly in rural Ireland. It is particularly beautiful. The greenery, and you do get a sense of, even though we're a very, very small country, when you're up on these mountains, it is incredibly vast. And you're looking around and all you see is these fields, these other small hills, the River Shannon, the Grand Canal, maybe some of the lakes, the Bura Lakes in the distance. You don't have to go up that high sometimes to see beauty and to really begin to appreciate the beauty that is around you. And it can be quite easily missed sometimes unless you do a little bit of exploring. And it's amazing, I know you mentioned the Wicklow Mountains and you mentioned the West Highland Mountains in Scotland. All of those are very, very spectacular. But again, they're not huge altitudes involved there. But yet, when you climb them on a lovely, clear, sunny day, it's amazing what you can see and the beauty that you see and the beauty that you begin to appreciate.
I agree with you. I remember thinking that the terrain was quite unique in Ireland and in Scotland because you have the heathers that are purple, and then you have the boggy ground, which is quite mossy looking, but very challenging in itself because your feet sink in, right? And then it's also laden with the boulders that you have to climb as well. And when you get to the top and you just see the vastness, as you say, of the mountain ranges, and then also looking down and perhaps seeing a lake or several lakes, it's quite stunning. And then there's also the mist as well. Even if you're climbing on a misty day or a cloudy day, it's actually quite breathtaking.
And there is where the challenge comes as well, Fabio, is that was another great skill that I've learned and continue to learn with the hiking group, was that what happens when the mist comes down or the mist rolls in, or what happens when there is a fog and suddenly you have no benchmark by which to kind of orientate yourself. How do you find yourself out of that situation? You cannot see anything. You possibly cannot see 5 meters in front of you. So you work on your compass skills, you work on your map reading skills, you work on how do you find yourself out through, particularly in Wicklow, you have a lot of what we call peat hags. And they're just kind of, as you say, it's a very boggy mountain. And when you have several peat hags in front of you, it's very easy in a fog or a mist to lose your orientation very quickly. So that was a very good skill set that I've learned with the Out and About hiking group, is finding your way when things are a little bit more challenging for you and using the skill sets and the knowledge that you've learned and using your compass skills, taking bearings and using your map reading skills. You're usually hiking with a group, or you're hiking with maybe a few other hikers who've decided to go out in a small group. And that can be a really interesting collaborative experience where you sit down together or work out together. How do we manage to get out of here? Because the mist has descended or the fog has rolled in, but we need to get back to where the cars are being parked, etc.
You go on major trips 4 to 5 times a year. What goes into your planning process?
Usually how I make the decision on where I go is I might go into a hiking shop, and every hiking shop will have guidebooks. Hikes in Ireland, hikes in Scotland, hikes in England, hikes in Europe. And I might just see a hike, a hiking book based maybe hiking in Corsica or hiking in the north of Italy or in Austria or Spain. And something just might attract me to it. I'll pick that book out and I might go on that hike. A lot of it maybe could be based on feedback from other fellow hikers that I've gone hiking with, who say, look, we've just come back from France. We've done this hike. We would really advise it. It's quite challenging. So I presume, first of all, is that, you get the guidebook or you talk to people. You look at the amount of time, days-wise, it's going to take. You would then plan maybe looking at how to get to the place, how to get to the location. And then you would look at what accommodation are you going to have every night? I don't camp anymore. I've done it in the past, but now I would try and go to stay in huts. And that's my favorite kind of hiking, really, when you go up onto a mountain range and then once you're up, you stay hiking from one peak to the next or around one peak to the next. And then you would stay in a hut from night to night. And basically, what that involves then is you get your dates, you have to contact the hut, you have to book your place, book your meal. It has to be organized before you go because you could, in the middle of June or July, arrive at a hut where you haven't booked, and it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere, with the nearest other hut being 3 to 4 hours of quite tough, challenging hiking ahead. And they would say, actually, we've no space. So you really have to have that aspect. Well, I do anyhow. I would prefer to have that aspect of it organized. So I know where I'm staying. I know that I'm going to get an evening meal there, and I know I'm going to get a fairly simple breakfast. And then I know where I'm going to go the next day as well. So I can really enjoy the hike then without having to think, well, I hope there's going to be a bed, or I hope there's going to be a platform that I can just throw my rucksack on and my sleeping bag and sleep for the night. I can really just take the hike at leisurely pace, then enjoy it all around, knowing that, yeah, I have a meal organized for me, ready for me in the evening. I don't have to do it myself. I don't have to prepare it myself, but I have it booked already.
What are the considerations that you have to take when it comes to clothing and equipment?
I've kind of learned this over years of experience, Fabio, and I would say to keep it as simple as possible, because usually the hiking I will do over periods of days is I'll carry my rucksack. So that means everything that I bring then is going to add up onto what I'm carrying on a daily basis, up and down and up and down, peak and trough and peak and trough. And then maybe you have to factor in that you're going to carry, particularly maybe in really, really warm summers in Italy and Switzerland and Austria, you're going to be looking at very, very, very warm days. So you're going to, with probably no water between one hut and the next. So you're looking at carrying then 3 liters of water to make sure that you have enough to keep you going for the day. So I would try and minimize my bag to about 10 kilograms or less. So it's basically 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of jocks, 2 tops, short sleeve, 2 tops, long sleeve, 2 pairs of shorts, and then leggings, and one good pair of boots and a pair of flip-flops, and a first aid kit. And then the clothing you just need to just wash out every so often, every second day or every night, and let it dry. So to keep it as simple and as light as possible, because most people are going to do the same, and you just get used to the smells of it at this stage. Or I just wash the clothes every evening, hang them out to dry, or the next morning, if I'm hiking, I just put them outside on the rucksack and hopefully they'll dry in the sun then. But I suppose you're buying clothing that would be specifically bought in a mountaineering shop or in a hiking shop that dries very, very easily and would have wicking qualities. In other words, it wicks away the smell. But I would say keep it very, very simple, keep it light, keep the essentials like your first aid kit, water, and maybe a few snacks, but nothing too much that it compromises the weight. Because, you know, particularly when you're going up and down, and particularly if at any stage you have to crawl, you have to use your hands and your feet to get you up, then it's important that it's quite light.
Yeah, no kidding. You said crawl. How often are you crawling when you go on these climbs?
I wouldn't say that often, but it's just that sometimes, like, I mean, you talked earlier on about boulders. In some cases, you know, you may be climbing mountains where there is no bog underneath. It is just boulder to boulder to boulder. And in that sense, you know, you need your 2 feet, but you also need your hands to balance you. Also, in many cases, you will have, particularly in Italy, you'll have via ferrata. And the via ferrata really are where they have the local mountaineering group or the national mountaineering group, because of how steep it is, or because of how eroded it may have become over the years, is that they have created cables to help support you and secure you, particularly if it's a very, very narrow path and there's nothing to the right of you. There's absolutely nothing but a sheer drop. So over the years, they would have put in via ferrata there and cables that are quite secure. So again, you have to remember, you have your bag on there, you have your two legs, but then you use the strength, your upper body strength there of your shoulders and your arms and your core there as well. In every 3 days, you might have it 1 day out of every 3. But again, it's just another skill for you to be aware of. And for some people, if they have vertigo, they would say, no, maybe the hike isn't for me because I'm quite strong, I'm quite fit, but I just don't like the fact that I'm on a ledge whereby it's a sheer drop down, a 10 meter, 20 meter, or 30 meter drop. And if anything was to happen to you, it's not necessarily fatal, but you would injure yourself.
So you mentioned Everest Base Camp earlier on. Was it the South Base Camp or the North Base Camp?
It was the base camp from Nepal.
So it was the South Base Camp. And that's about 5,300 meters above sea level, right? You also did Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, and that was nearly 6,000 meters above sea level. So these are actually quite high. Can you describe those specific adventures, as you mentioned that they were a couple of your most challenging?
For those two adventures, Fabio, what is interesting about those adventures is one is that you must go with a group. You must go with an experienced guide. You're not allowed to access these mountains or try to climb these mountains or any part of those mountains unless you have a qualified guide, a recognized guide, and a registered guide. What's also challenging about those hikes is that you're now going to hike with people you've never hiked before and you've never met before. And also, I presume that for me, the big challenge of those hikes is now you're getting to altitudes you've never climbed before. We have no way in Ireland or even in Scotland mountains as near as high as these mountains. So you've never been able to factor in altitude and the possibility of altitude sickness as you would when you do Everest Base Camp or Kilimanjaro. So it's very much a trial and error. But in both cases, we were very lucky. We went with an Irishman called Ian Taylor. And Ian Taylor is based in America and in Ireland. And he, at one stage, was the youngest Irishman, I think, to climb Mount Everest. I went with Ian with some friends, and it was a really excellent experience. He was very cognizant of the fact that most of us would not have been used to hiking at this altitude. And so things were done a little bit slower, maybe even with an extra day to allow everyone to acclimatize. So that worked really, really well for all of us. Very good team bonding within both of the groups that I went with, even though we never met each other before. Very good camaraderie, very light. Everyone kept a very good sense of humor, but at the same time, very challenging hiking, particularly in both cases when it came to the final kind of getting to the height that you were aspiring to get to, either to the summit of Kilimanjaro, which is a really long hike the night before there. You get up, I think if I remember correctly, it's something like 1 o'clock in the morning and you begin hiking and you're trying to get there for sunrise. So it's very much, I think the phrase that was used in Kenya at the time was poli poli, which means slowly, slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth, breathe one step at a time, just keep on going, just one step at a time, watch your breathing, keep an eye on each other, keep tight as a group. And, as a group, we all made it. So we were very, very lucky that none of us, you experience a little bit maybe of discomfort, a little bit of indigestion, a little bit of a headache, but nothing to the extent whereby you felt, right, I'm so uncomfortable, I need to either stop here and I need to descend.
So in which climb were you required to go with a group?
Both.
Okay. What were the specific challenges? You mentioned altitude sickness. What other challenges did you have on those hikes?
I would say, as well as altitude sickness, is your accommodation would be much more basic. So it would be when you were doing Kilimanjaro, it's camping. The group will be organized for you. They're already set up. I suppose it's just that constant, the focus of that it is a long day. It is a slow day. It's a slow hike. And I think what a lot of us as hikers feel is that, oh, you want to get moving. I want to get moving here. I can move a little bit faster than this. I know I can move faster than this. I've hiked faster than this before. And you can forget about the altitude, where it's actually better at altitude just to go slowly, slowly. And if it's an hour longer or an hour and a half longer, at least you've done it without experiencing any altitude sickness. You can have a little discomfort. It's allowing your body, all of your body, to acclimatize. Your muscles are saying, you normally move on a mountain much faster than this. Why are you going so slowly? And I suppose it's just getting all of your body to say, I need to go much slower because I'm at a much higher altitude. And also there is less oxygen. And that is one thing you begin to notice as well, Fabio, when you get up higher, particularly over 5,000, is you find that you're breathing a little bit shallower, really, because you're thinking, or deeper, because you need to get in more oxygen. So you can kind of notice that it's almost as though you were a cigarette smoker, maybe, that you're inhaling a little bit deeper to get in more, because you do begin, your body begins to notice that there is less oxygen when you're breathing in.
How does temperature factor into all of this?
I suppose it was a little bit cooler. If I remember, yeah, it was cooler. But you again, the company that we hiked with, again, Ian Taylor Trekking, they were really good at saying what you should bring with you. And again, what in most cases you do is you bring layers. And then you can put on layers at any stage once you stop when it gets cooler. Or if it gets warmer, you can de-layer as well. So it didn't get to the point whereby it was absolutely really incredibly cold. But if it did at any stage, you have your inner layer of gloves and then your bigger gloves, and you had your maybe 3 or 4 layers and a jacket on you. And if it got very cold, remove the jacket, take off a layer and put back on the jacket again.
Did you run into any inclement weather?
Luckily not. We did have, when we were going to Everest, we had one day where it was, usually people can go to Everest Base Camp in 7 days. When we did it in 8 days. So we had one day before we made our final ascent to absolutely relax the body, completely acclimatize. We did a short little hike that day, up a few hundred meters and down again. And that was the day when we had the most inclement of weather, but it cleared the next day. So we were just very lucky there. We didn't have, and in most of the hiking I do, I'm very lucky. You don't have weather that would, I would say, make it much more dangerous for you. And if it did, then you just don't hike. That would be me for a golden rule. If that you really felt that this was putting you at risk or any other member of the team at risk, then you would just leave it.
What did that inclement weather look like?
Extremely heavy snow and wind. Very heavy, extremely heavy snow, wind, low cloud, and fog.
Winds are fairly high at that altitude, though, anyway, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But not as, I have been in much windier conditions in Ireland, much windier conditions in Ireland, because you're still kind of with base camp, you're kind of going around the mountain rather than actually going up to the summit of it. So then you're exposed, but not as exposed. And, not as precarious, the ground that you would be on. And, you're not dealing with crevices. You're not having to cross over ladders. You're not having to have an ice pick. So you're more assured of the ground that is underneath you. Now, you do have your poles and you do have if you wish to, you can have your crampons as well on your boots to give you a grip. But we didn't need them that much. Poles, yes, but crampons, no.
You said you went with a group and that you didn't know everyone in the group. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology here, but I'm wondering if you had any Sherpas that were carrying your
Yes.
items?
Yes, we did have Sherpas. Yes, you had Sherpas in Nepal, and then you had people that helped you as well, experienced guides who helped you as well in Kenya as well.
And what kind of equipment or things would they carry up for you?
Basically, when I packed, you would pack usually maybe a second set of clothing or a third set of clothing. You would try to keep it fairly small because you're fairly cognizant of the fact that somebody else is going to carry some of your equipment. So usually I would maybe just have a second set of clothing or even perhaps a third, so that at some stage over the 8 days you will have a change of clothes, but nothing else major. I wouldn't have put in, like, I mean, at the end of the hike, we had a day or two in Kathmandu, but I just wore the hiking clothes. I just wore the hiking clothes that I had for the whole 8 days.
So those two ascents that you just mentioned, Everest and Kilimanjaro, they were a couple of your most memorable experiences. You also mentioned that the Dolomites in Italy, which are over 3,000 meters, Mont Blanc, which is nearly 5,000 meters and spills across three countries, Switzerland, Italy, and France. You also mentioned a couple of others. I'm wondering if you can maybe talk about some of those other adventures that you went on.
I suppose with Mont Blanc, again, the Mont Blanc, every year or every second year, there are a group of us, there are four of us that try and hike together. And we enjoy a challenging hike. And also, it's an opportunity for us to catch up. One of the guys who hikes with us lives in Germany, in Munich. The other guy lives in Brussels. Etna, a very good fellow hiker of mine and very good friend of mine, she lives in Dublin. And the four of us would try and do a challenging hike in Europe every second year, at least, if not every year. We did the Tour de Mont Blanc, and again, you don't ascend that one. Again, you need a permit to ascend Mont Blanc, and you would need probably a better skill set that I would have at the moment. And you would also need a guide to bring you up. And also, when you do something like that as well, Fabio, you have to factor in costing. Because once you talk about ascent of mountains like Everest or maybe Mont Blanc, etc., you are talking costing goes way up then, because there are permissions, there are guides, there is an extended stay maybe on the mountain. You may have to be more flexible in your time frame, because the day that you need to summit maybe not be the day that may be the optimum day. So you might have to hang around for a day or two until the weather gets better before you summit. So we did the Tour de Mont Blanc. And again, that, if I remember correctly, that's a 12-day hike. That is an amazing hike because you see Mont Blanc all the time. And it is from Switzerland into France, into Italy, and back into Switzerland again. And again, there's a great camaraderie there in the group of people that you're hiking with. You hike together as a group, but what I love is it still allows you every day to have that moment just on your own when you can all see each other. The four of you are hiking together, but you still have your distance where you can just have that moment to kind of, what I would do is you reflect on the beauty of it all, and you just have that lovely moment of just looking at all that is around you. And again, the vastness of it, the power of it, the beauty of it, the vulnerability of it all. And I think you just really appreciate it. And what's really nice about that hike as well is that there are many groups of people doing that. And there's a very, when you finish up in the hut every evening, most people will have a beer, and sit out and just, if the weather's good, and just watch the sunset coming down over the mountain. And there's a really nice bond. And people kind of, I think, have that kind of shared sense of wonder and awe of the day that they've had and the days that are going to come, and how lucky they are to have had this opportunity to kind of walk on such a beautiful mountain and look at a beautiful mountain at many stages throughout the day, from sunrise to noon to sunset. Yeah, that's quite nice. I mean, that's a very nice feeling, a nice bonding. In regards then to the Dolomites, I love hiking with people, but I really like hiking on my own. I just love that time. The Dolomites I did last year on my own. I think that was 12 days hiking. I've also done the E5, and that was from Germany to Switzerland to Austria into northern Italy. That was 28 days hiking, and I did that one alone as well. You're never really alone. You'll always meet people along the way. You'll always have a chat with people every evening at a hut. You know, where have you come from? What did you see? What animals did you see? What plants did you see? What flowers did you see? Where are you going to next? But yet at the same time, you're allowed that kind of moment where you can just be on your own and just get into your own rhythm and get into your own pace and just enjoy the whole thing, the whole spectacle of what is around you. And I really like those moments. I quite savor those moments.
You mentioned the nature and the animals and the terrain. And I'm wondering, you've been to so many different countries and climbed many different mountains. I'm wondering which terrains you found to be the most exotic, interesting, challenging.
I would say perhaps the most challenging trek I have done was with my friend Etna, and that was in Corsica. That's called the GR20. And you hike, even though it's an island, it is an island with a huge mountain range right in the spine of the country, from the north of the island down to the south of the island. And it is extremely rugged. And again, it's the hiking I really like. Once you're up on the hike, the mountain range, you're on the mountain range. And I think it was only after 5 days you came into a valley. You could have a bit of a break, visit a town, and then up to the mountains again. And you hike from hut to hut along the spine of those mountains. Getting back to your point earlier on, there was a lot of clambering on those mountains. You definitely had to use a lot of your upper body, and you were a lot of the time on your hands and your knees, whereby you had to actually use your upper body strength to help you get over a lot of boulders, or to go on via ferrata, or just to make yourself a little bit more secure as you were going up through gullies. Sometimes you were going up through gullies, so you would need your 4 points of contact, either ascending, and definitely your 4 points of contact descending, just to make sure that you are a little bit more secure. And again, you have your bag on your back all the time. So this is an extra 10 to 12 kilograms that you're not normally carrying. So again, you're using your upper body here to just kind of help your balance. So I really enjoyed that, because it's not often you get to do that in Ireland. It can be a little bit challenging and a little bit discombobulating at times when you're hiking and you're climbing or you're descending. You're using your hands, and then you forget actually there's this extra thing that's attached to you that you just have to be mindful of. So it's just a different skill set, but I enjoy that.
And the one you mentioned, the GR20 in Corsica, I was looking it up online. That's a 200-kilometer trail, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. And again, we did it in July. It was extremely warm, even though you're at altitude. It was extremely warm. But what is quite beautiful about it is that you're up on these very, very high mountains, and yet to both sides of you, because it is an island, you can see the sea. You can see the Mediterranean. So it's quite spectacular in that sense. There is one day when you do go down into the valley, which means you're back again more or less to sea level again. So that means you've done a lot of ascent, descent, ascent, descent, and then you're down again to sea level again, and then you're going back up again. But that was perhaps, I would say, one of the most challenging days, because it was 12 days of very intensive hiking. That was perhaps, even over Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, that definitely surpassed both of those, not in terms of altitude, not in terms of beauty, but definitely in terms of the challenge that it was, because of the ascent, descent, because of the clambering, because of the constantly needing to use your 4 points of contact, and because there were long days, long days of hiking. And, you just had to have your wits about you. Be careful, because it was quite precipitous in certain parts of it, and quite a lot of ledges. So not for somebody who would have vertigo.
You mentioned beauty, This is an audio podcast, so no one has the ability to see what you've seen. I'm wondering if you could maybe describe visually what you've been able to see and experience through your adventures.
It's a very hard thing to describe. I mean, even if you're talking even from Ireland, if you get a clear day in Wicklow where you have hiked, you can see in the distance, you can see the beautiful mountains of Northern Ireland, the Mourne Mountains. You can see over to Wales, the coast of Wales and the Anglesey Mountains. And sometimes you can see, the mountain ranges where Snowdonia are. You can see the Isle of Man. That incredibly clear day of a beautiful blue sea and a beautiful blue sky. And it's just that vastness. And yet in the distance, you see in the horizon, you see that other country or that other island. And the same maybe with the GR20, where you're up on this mountain, this very, very arid, quite severe terrain, really, very, very rocky, very jagged. And yet you're just looking onto what looks like just this kind of warm bath of blue water, and the sun, beaming over it. It's incredibly, incredibly beautiful. And I suppose there's one factor that I haven't mentioned yet. For me, the whole hiking is that sense of connect that I personally get anyhow with nature, that I've always got with nature, be it just on a walk on a beach or a walk in a forest. But to see it at such a huge level, and that well-being it gives you, I get that well-being of just thinking, oh my goodness me, is this incredibly beautiful. And I think it just makes me stop and think, and sometimes I take it for granted. But it's those little moments where you just take a little step back and you just sit on a ledge or you sit on a rock and you have those 15 minutes where you're not talking to anybody else. And you just look at the whole thing and you just think, wow, incredible.
And of course, in Ireland, you have the added beauty of the quality of green. There's a certain quality of green that exists in Ireland that I've never seen anywhere else. And I think it's just so spectacular. You mentioned the Mournes in Northern Ireland. You've actually been there. Can you describe that trek to those mountain ranges?
Yes, the Mournes, they're a different rock foundation. They're a different rock structure, morphology than you would have down in Wicklow. They're not as boggy. They're much more, the ground underneath you is much more solid. Again, and what's really interesting is when you start hiking in the Mournes, you are starting at sea level. And you're nearly every time you're very near the coast when you begin the hike, wherever your car park is. And again, as you begin to go up, you see the sea all the time. You see the Irish Sea. And again, they're just really, really spectacular mountains. Every year they have a challenge there in Northern Ireland called the Seven Sevens. And I've done that with the hiking group. And there is always that, I think, in any person, in any athlete, that kind of now and again, I just would like to challenge myself to see, can I do this? Can I do it in a certain time? But I think I've gone past that now, where I don't do that anymore, but not in a certain time anyhow. But I do like the challenge now to see, can I do these mountains? Can I navigate through these mountains? Am I able to do the hike in the Mournes is the 7-7, where you do 7 of the peaks. And again, you have to navigate through them depending on the weather. Hopefully, if it's a clear day, they're very easy to navigate because the trail is very obvious. But if it's not so clear, then it's a little bit more difficult. But what is beautiful about the Mournes all the time is that you're constantly looking down at the sea on one side. And then you can see in the distance the cityscape of Belfast and Lough Neagh. And if you look down south, you can see the Cooley Mountains of County Louth. And then in some really good days, you can begin to see Lambay Island and maybe the Wicklow Mountains as well, the outline of the Wicklow Mountains. So again, it's just that beauty.
You say that hiking in Europe is more difficult because of the higher altitudes and you have to carry your own gear and water. Can you describe that challenge?
Well, it's a challenge I love. I actually love it. And also I love the fact that you know that you are going to be in mountains non-stop for 10 days or 15 days or more. You're going to get up in the mountains. You're going to walk in the mountains. You're going to sleep in the mountains. And you're going to do it again and again and again. And at no stage do I ever tire of that. I just love that moment where you kind of come in the evening, you arrive in a hut, you find wherever you're going to sleep, you sit down with your beer or with the people that are there, and you just look at the mountains and the wonderful sunset. And then then first thing in the morning when sun comes up, you can go out and you're surrounded by these mountains again. So I think that it's that lovely extended break away from all your work and all the worries that you have in the world. And it's just this vastness in front of you of these, this beautiful scenery, this beautiful nature. And it's just a privilege to be able to do it and to be able to see it. And, it's a thing that I very much appreciate.
What are your hiking goals right now?
I would say to continue to try and keep fit still, to continue enjoying it as much as I do enjoy it, to continue to appreciate it as much as I appreciate it, to continue to promote it as much as possible to anybody, because I do think it's a really good hobby. I do think it's a really good lifelong hobby, Fabio. I think you can do it from a very young age right throughout your life, and you can do it at various challenges. I presume where I really like it is I was in a gym. When I lived in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi, there were no mountains there. So most of my fitness came from running and from being in a gym. The same in Belgium, very few mountains there. So most of my fitness came from running and being in a gym. I reached a point where I was tired of being indoors. You're indoors at work, you're indoors at home. And then I was indoors getting fit. And I just thought I'd like something different. And this was the added dimension of being outdoors and still maintaining your fitness. I would say your physical fitness, your mental fitness, your well-being fitness, your emotional fitness, everything. This, to me, hiking caters for all of those at whatever level that you are able to do it at. I mean, I'm not able to rock climb, and I wouldn't be able to run up Mount Everest tomorrow morning and summit it and then K2, but I still can hike and get out there. And I think the beauty of hiking and trekking is there'll always be a hill or a mountain that whatever level you are at, you'll be able to get there. And no matter how high it is, be it 300 meters, be it 3,000 meters, be it 6,000 meters, be it 8,000 meters, you'll still get a wonderful view from it. Just to be able to sit and take stock of all that is around you. There is a lot that is very, very beautiful. I just think it's, a privilege to see it, but also to be cognizant of it, that we're guardians of it as well.
Have you had any injuries as a result of your climbing?
Fingers crossed. No. Yeah, just a sore back maybe, or nothing major at all, no.
What mountains or mountain ranges do you have your sights on now?
I have done Alta Via 1. I'd love to do Alta Via 2. Again, that is more challenging. Alta Via 1, I did on my own. Alta Via 2, because it is a little bit more challenging, I'd like to do that with one or two other people, just for the support there and that somebody would have your back. And there are one or two very challenging parts on that. And maybe I might do a little course on that one beforehand, maybe upskill myself in, wearing a helmet and having a harness around you to help you support yourself through the Via Ferrata. So that is one in mind at the moment. I'd love to go to Morocco. I'd love to go hiking in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. I hear they're very, very beautiful. And again, they have snow in them for quite a lot of the time of the year. And yes, once you come down off those mountains, you're along the sea and you're in a warm climate. I would love to maybe to try the Caucasus over near Russia or over in Georgia. I'd like to try those at some stage. Would I like to go back to around Everest? Yes. I'd love to go maybe to Island Peak. That is another part of Everest that would be a little bit more challenging as well. But I'd have to get my fitness up for that. But these are things that are aspirational, and I'd love to do them. If I can do them, great. But if not, that's absolutely fine. I'm quite happy just to continue hiking where I am at the moment.
What does resilience mean to you?
I suppose when you think of your podcast and the name I love actually of the stumbling spirit, I like the notion to me of the stumbling spirit is that we stumble, we all stumble, and that is part of our life. It is part of life. I think I don't think anyone can say I've never stumbled in my life, and I don't mean just physical stumbles. I mean other stumbles, more emotional stumbles, well-being stumbles, etc. And we all have those. And then I think that that's where resilience comes in, is that to have that spirit to just get back up again and dust yourself off and learn and move on and go again. There'll always be that wobble as well. There'll always be that stumble. And resilience means that the resilience from within yourself, but also the resilience that you get from your friends, from your families, from your hiking group, from the people who hike with you, to help you to continue on despite the stumbles.
You mentioned that it's important for you to connect with nature and that hiking is really important for you. I'm wondering whether you have any other practices of resilience that you incorporate into your life.
What I try to do is, I have a very busy job. We are 240 students. We have a staff of 30. I would say from 6 in the morning until maybe 5 in the evening, I'm constantly interested in other people and how they're faring and their well-being and their education. So you're constantly giving all the time. And what you do is you put yourself in second place there. But what I have learned is that there does come a point where you need to park your work at a certain time and you need to look after yourself, because an engine can't run on an empty tank. In leading a school and leading a staff and leading the children, you need to be in the whole of all of your health, your physical health, your emotional health, your well-being. And I think what I've learned is that's why it is important for me to go on these hiking trips. It is that moment where I just have that time to myself to recalibrate, to appreciate all is around me, to re-energize myself. So it's kind of the resilience to allow yourself, to give yourself permission to take time for yourself. And that is important. I think sometimes we're not very good at that. I think we think maybe there's a selfishness to it, but I do think it's not at all being selfish at all. I think it's important that you need to know when you've reached your limit. You need to have a little bit of time for yourself, re-energize yourself. And with that, Jen, you re-energize others, and then you can continue in the role that you have in your professional life.
I just have a question around your advice for anybody that might be interested in pursuing hiking as a hobby. What words do you have for them?
A good pair of boots, a really good pair of boots. Buy a proper pair of boots. If you're hiking in Ireland, buy a proper rain jacket. It will save you a lot of time in the long run, and maintain it. Follow the cleaning instructions of both of those, the boots and the rain jacket. Spend a little extra on those, because those are the two most important things, your boots and your rain jacket. But also I would say is just start at the level that you're at. Give yourself time. Go on a hike yourself, or go on a hike with maybe a friend. Start off with a walk, introduce a little bit of altitude, try a hill, maybe try a second hill, but don't expect it all to happen overnight. And also what I would say is, even if you're very fit from a gym point of view, or a soccer point of view, or an athletics point of view, hiking is you're using different muscles in your body. So it can be a little challenging. You are introducing altitude, you are introducing ascent and descent, you are introducing boggy land, you are introducing maybe a little bit of uneven ground as well, etc. So I would say take it easy, but I would say the big one is absolutely take time to enjoy it. Make sure you factor in those moments where you enjoy the company of the people around you, or your own company, but just give yourself that moment to just stop and have a look at it all around you. and enjoy it, because it just gives you back so much. So it does.
How can people reach you if they want to contact you?
They can contact me at any stage at all. It's Scully, Scully, Noel, and the number 8 at gmail.com.
Noel, I really appreciate our time together today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your passion of hiking. I'm sure that you will inspire a lot of people and draw them to connecting with nature more.
I hope so, because I do think there are huge benefits. I think there are huge rewards for it at many different levels.
Thank you for listening to The Stumbling Spirit, Contemplations on the Path of Resilience. This is Fabio da Silva Fernandez. Join me again next week for another episode of transformative stories and beneficial practices to guide you on your wellness journey. If you wish, you can follow and DM me on Instagram at The Stumbling Spirit. Until next time, take a deep breath and another step forward on your path of resilience.